Welcome back. Welcome back. This is the People's Voice. I am Trey Evans and I am the People's Voice. Thank you again for checking out the podcast this week. As always, it is greatly appreciated. As always, we thank everyone who has taken some time to listen to the podcast today. We do understand that you could be utilizing your time to do something else, so we are appreciative of you taking the time to listen to the podcast today. As always, if this information is valuable and you feel it to be enlightening, we do ask that you subscribe to the podcast. That way you'll be notified when each episode is released. We do put out a new episode each and every Friday, which can be heard on all podcast platforms. And we put a video out on YouTube every Wednesday as well for those of you who would like to watch the podcast. And then also, please remember to turn on those notifications. That way you'll be notified. And you will be listening to the People's Voice podcast. So as always, thank you and welcome to the People's Voice podcast. Today, I want to get right into the topic of prison labor here in the United States. And it's one of those topics that I know it's not of top of mind for many people. And even someone such as myself who, researches social issues and other topics of this nature, it is something that doesn't stay top of mind for me, and I'm going to be much mindful about doing that. But today I want to talk about prison labor here in the United States because it is prevalent, and it is playing a major role in industry. And I want to highlight it because, number one, I want to get this information out to people because I don't think, again, many people have this top of mind. Obviously, there are people who are listening to my voice right now that have family members that are incarcerated and behind the walls of many prisons across the country. So, I definitely want to make sure that they understand that someone is doing something, or at least, ringing the alarm to try to bring some awareness to this issue. And then also want to talk about what's being done to kind of try to correct it, or at least address it from a legislative standpoint. So that's what I want to talk about. I want to talk about today. I want to talk about the prison labor system here in the United States. And I want to talk about this because, not because, but I've talked about similar topics before. I did a podcast, I think last year, maybe the year before, on the prison industrial complex, which is a real thing. It is not, some myth. I talked about the companies that partner with or contract with the prison and jail systems in terms of providing services such as food services, and also the prison phone and video systems, which is a whole nother layer of exploitation, in my opinion. And I'll definitely, link that in the video for those of you who are watching on YouTube. And then, those of you who are listening, you can pull that podcast up as well. But the prison labor system here in the United States is a major player in terms of providing not only products, but foods and services to many of the American citizens, and not only American citizens, because some of these products are exported to other countries as well. So I wanted to talk about this today because AP, the Associated Press, has been doing a piece over the last probably 3 months now, probably closer to 6 months. They're doing a investigation into the prison labor system, and they recently came out with part 2 of this investigation. Part 1 kind of highlighted the prison labor system in the process. Part 2 goes into the injuries that many of these prisoners are enduring as a result of working within this prison labor system. So let me define first. First, let me define what prison labor is, because I want to talk about that, and that'll kind of give us a baseline, and then I'll go from there. So prison labor, as it's defined, and I'm reading a piece here from freedomunited.org, and they've kind of defined what prison labor is, and bring it up here on the screen. They say prison labor or penal labor is work that is performed by incarcerated and detained people. It says not all prison labor is forced labor, but the setting involves unique modern slavery risk. And I want you to remember that. Unique modern slavery risk because of its inherent power imbalance and because those incarcerated have few avenues to challenge abuses behind bars. And that's basically the definition for prison labor as defined here by Freedom United. The reason I stopped there in terms of highlighting that portion of the definition when it says involves unique modern slavery risk is because the prison labor system as it's designed today was and is developed directly off the back of slavery, chattel slavery, as it's more commonly known, that occurred here in the United States, that, as many know, involved the exploitations of Africans and people of color in order to have them work for for zero pay, and for the purpose of developing agriculture at the time and other industries for the profit of those who were slave owners and other entities that utilized slaves. I bring that up because, as I said, prison labor today was built on the back of chattel slavery and slavery here in the United States. And one of the reasons why I know this to be true is because it is written in law. Many may know this, but the 13th Amendment of the United States Constitution was or is responsible for ending slavery, right? In terms of ending legal slavery in the United States, which, you know, of course, was a result after the end of the Civil War and things of that nature. But in the 13th Amendment, there is a clause in there that basically allows prison labor, or was the birth to prison labor, because slavery was no longer allowed. And the 13th Amendment basically birthed what is prison labor today, which is still a form of slavery. And I'll talk about that and kind of go through that a little bit in terms of my comparison. But just reading the 13th Amendment real quick, and I'm just getting this from the National Archives.org. This is the definition. It says the 13th Amendment to the United States Constitution provides that neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as punishment for crime whereof the party shall be duly convicted, shall exist in the United States or any place subject to their jurisdiction. But the key part of this is that it says neither slavery nor involuntary servitude except as punishment for crime. And because of that definition in the United States Constitution, you now have today modern day slavery. As of today, it is noted that there's over 2 million individuals, 2 million Americans that are incarcerated in the prison systems here in the United States. Over 800,000 of those work within what they call the prison labor system. The prison labor system is responsible for providing resources, not only labor resources, but many of the ingredients and products and foods that you and I consume to the companies that we purchase this from. Now, I want to be very clear. When I say that it's responsible, meaning that many of these companies, and I'm going to go through this AP piece where they talked about some of these companies, but many of these companies are not directly employing prison labor, but they are benefiting from the companies or the supply chains that supply them with the products needed to create their products, specifically when you're talking about in the food industry. Matter of fact, let me jump into this piece from AP, and they laid out a number of companies that are actually benefiting from prison labor supply chains. And many of these companies are companies that you know. I know for those of you who are watching, you can see here on the screen, but these are major companies that are have been linked to receiving or being benefiting from prison labor. You have companies such as Coca-Cola, McDonald's, Costco, Burger King, Ballpark Franks, Target. I mean, it just goes on and on and on. Again, I want to be very clear. I'm not saying that these companies are employing prison labor, but they are benefiting from the companies that are providing prison labor. And who are those companies and where are those companies located? Well, many of these companies are what they call prison farms, right? And these prison farms basically utilize labor from the prison system, and they have individuals that come out and they work these farms to get all of the resources, right, to make these products that then are sold to you and I. Many of these farms are located in, ironically, the same states that were fighting against the abolishment of slavery. I mean, it is just mind-boggling, and I'm really talking about this from a high level because this AP piece, and of course I'm going to link it in the video, is deep. Like it's deep. But I'm just talking about it from a high level. But again, many of these prison farms are located in the same states where where slavery was last to end and where slavery was fought against the most. Angola, and many of you have probably heard about the Angola State Prison. This is in Louisiana. Angola State Prison is built on a former plantation where slaves used to literally work in the fields to pick the product of that time, whether it was, wheat, or if it was rice, or if it was cotton. But the prison itself is located on the same fields where the slavery plantations was located. I bring that up because Louisiana is one of those states that utilize state labor. Matter of fact, I'm just jumping back into this AP piece really quick, and they highlighted in this piece, they talked to a prisoner. His name was William Ingram, and I'm pulling this up here on the screen, excuse me. And he was a prisoner for 51 years. He was in state penitentiary for 51 years. In this piece, he talked about how he picked everything from cotton to okra. I'm reading here from the article. He says during his time in the fields, he was overseen by armed guards on horseback, and recalled seeing men with little or no water passing out in triple-digit heat. He says some days workers would throw tools in the air to protest despite knowing the potential consequences. Here's the thing that really got me about this in terms of how close, how much it's similar, how much it is similar in terms of the stories of obviously that I've read about the conditions in slavery and what is currently going on today. And again, this is just one example. He says here, and he's talking about the correction officers, the police officers that worked the jail. He said they'd come maybe four in the truck, shields over their face, billy clubs, and they'd beat you right in the field. They'd beat you, handcuff you, and beat you again. He goes on to say that, basically he was told initially when he got arrested that he would be there for 10 and a half years, but he ended up staying there until he was 73 years old. And he was released from prison at 73 years old. This is just one case, but again, this AP piece goes through case after case after case where literally these prisoners are working under conditions that are they're inhumane. They're not almost, they're inhumane. Not only that, but they're in some cases getting paid no money, or in some cases they get paid no money. In some cases they get paid, well below the state minimum wage. And then even what they get paid is then there's a deduction from what they're getting paid because, in some cases, in some states, 60% of their pre-tax dollars, if you will, goes to the state, and then they end up with pennies on the dollar. And it just goes through, this AP piece goes through many different scenarios about this. And this is not, and I want to make this clear, this is not just male prisoners. This is not just prisoners of color, black men or black women or people of color. This is literally going on in multiple states, specifically and especially, not specifically, but especially in those southern states. Let me play a bit of this piece from AP because they did such a great job with this, and I don't want to, steal their thunder. Again, this is a two-part piece that they did, but I'm going to play here a piece from this AP because they also did a video documentary of it, and they talked about they talked about some of the injuries that are occurring as a result of the prison labor, and I'm going to talk about that, talk about what prisoners unfortunately cannot do, and then I'll kind of talk about what's on the horizon and close out from there. But let me play this piece again. This is from AP.
Into solitary confinement.
Because anytime you bump it,
and if they are hurt on the job, they often have little recourse.
They aren't eligible for workman's compensation, nor are they protected by other worker safety laws because they're not considered quote unquote employees.
And that is, another atrocity, again, in my opinion, of this prison labor system. But again, the similarities to what slavery was here in the United States it is beyond concerning. One of those reasons why not only are they, as stated there in the piece, they're not even regarded as, human beings. And when things happen to them, they can't do anything from a legal standpoint is also because of the Prison Litigation Reform Act. And basically the Prison Litigation Reform Act makes it harder, better known as the PLRA. It says here, and I'm reading the definition, place several restrictions on prisoners' ability to fight civil right lawsuits based on the conditions of their confinement. So there's actually legislation in place that doesn't even allow them to go about putting together a lawsuit in the cases where they are hurt or they feel like they're being exploited. And this went into effect in 1996. So what can be done, right? I just went through a whole litany of ranting and raving about what's going on. What can be done? Well, Currently, there are on the ballot. There is legislation in several states, including Alabama, Louisiana, Oregon, Tennessee, and Vermont, to decide whether or not there can be an amendment to the 13th or ratifying of the 13th Amendment in terms of prohibiting slavery and involuntary servitude as a result of punishment. Because that piece in that 13th Amendment is the reason why many of these states that have prison labor are basically allowed to continue to do this, because it's written in law that, hey, we can't enslave you, but if you being punished for a crime, then we can definitely enslave you and put you to work for dollars on a penny, if anything at all. And I just highlighted such a small piece of this. I could probably do another 2-3 hours on this. Of course, I'm not going to do that. But for those of you who are in those states, be aware of that when you're voting this year, about getting that change, because that's going to snowball and really create effect and change that is needed to abolish this once and for all, or to ensure that if prison labor is being used, that people are being compensated and protected from a health standpoint. Because I know there are those who are arguing, well, they're in jail, they're going to learn a skill set. No, this is not what's going on in a lot of these cases. Now, of course, there are some work release programs that do provide skill sets. I'm not saying that, but what I'm highlighting today is literally modern day slavery, and it needs to be addressed. So, that's my time for today. That's what I wanted to talk about. I'm not going to continue to go on with that, but again, I'll link everything that I read on this, that I covered, in the video links. And of course, if you want to leave a comment, you can reach us at the People's Voice Podcast on Instagram, or you can reach me at any of the social media platforms at I am Trey Evans. But that is my time for today. As always, dreams are not just for sleeping. Please wake up and live your dreams. My name is Trey Evans, the People's Voice. Tell somebody about the dream. Salute.